Okay, we're going to do something a little bit more interesting now, a bit more fun. So instead of just that normal simple pose, let's try and make something a bit more dynamic. Let's have a guy jumping through the air, maybe attacking. Again, this is a very loose, sketchy stage. What I like to call the scribble. So we're going to get into some foreshortening now, which is the objects that are closer are bigger. Now I'll explain that again in a minute, but for now we'll just get this rough pose down here, and let's have something like this for that back arm. Alright, not too bad. I'm just going to cheat here because I'm using digital method. I can just move this guy up a bit. If I was doing this on paper, I'd obviously have to erase it and redraw it, but for now we'll just do that. Okay, so there's my very energetic jump and punch pose. Foreshortening. What is foreshortening? Just really quickly, because this is not on, it's on anatomy, which is what we're trying to concentrate on. But foreshortening is objects closer to the viewer appear larger. So if I was to draw an arm coming forwards, we would get something like this. So I'm going to do it in cylinders. Okay, this would be our arm coming forwards. So what it would look like if we put the actual anatomy on here, this would be our forearm. Bicep, tricep, and our shoulder muscle here. And then of course we would have our hand however we want to do that. On the end of it like that. Now, again, just because I'm using digital, just to make it a bit quicker, that hand needs to be a bit bigger like that. Okay, that is our foreshortened arm. I'm not sure why this bar is still up. That's right, it's gone. Okay, so you can see here that the arm looks like it's coming closer to the viewer. And there's a couple of things that are attributing to this. Sorry, having some technical difficulties there. So as I was saying, a few things that are attributing to making this arm look like it's coming forward. The first thing is the change in size. So the wrist, generally when you're drawing an arm, if I draw an arm out to the side here, one thing you'll notice is the wrist is much thinner than the rest of the arm. So this part here is thinner than the rest of it. But because it's closer to us, it will appear larger than the rest of it. So this part appears larger than this part, which is the complete opposite to if it's not in perspective and not being foreshortened. So size is important. The next thing that's important is overlapping. So you'll see the bicep technically overlaps here, but when we're doing foreshortening, if I was to do this, you can see that brings that to the front, and it doesn't look, it looks a bit off. So we want to have the overlap, the object that's in front overlaps the object that's behind, okay? And when you see an arm in perspective like this, you will get this effect, so it's not incorrect. Okay, so you want size, overlapping. The other thing with the size is the longer the object, the closer it is. So as it goes back, each object will get shorter. Because you can see here that this part is pretty much the same length as this part, but this section here is way shorter than this section here. And you can get some really exaggerated and I'll just clean this up for you. You can see that that is much closer now than what it was before. And again, I'm following exactly the same rules. So this part is longer than this part, it's bigger than this part, and it's overlapping. Okay, and it's important to make sure you get all of those features. Otherwise, you know, if you miss just one of them, it's not going to look quite right. Okay, let's move on. So we've got our guy here. I'm going to knock him back a bit. Now this is the part where we come in and we start to get our proportions correct, and things like that, and make sure it's all lining up where it's meant to. Again, at this point, we're not looking for our anatomy, we're looking for our form. Now, depending on the complexity of the pose, it is possible to skip this part. You know, if you've got a good grasp on the form, you could easily get away with skipping this part for simple poses. What you don't want to do is jump ahead and be skipping this part all the time for complicated poses, especially poses with like foreshortening and stuff like that, because what's going to happen is you're going to miss certain aspects of it. So it is important to use it when necessary. Like I said, if you have a good grasp and a good eye, you don't need to use it. You know, you shouldn't restrict yourself to it. But at the same time, don't think that you can just ignore this. The same way, you know, you can't just bluff your way through anatomy and just draw whatever you want. There needs to be, in order for it to look correct, it needs to be correct. The other thing you can see I'm doing is I'm drawing through. So although, you know, this arm is overlapping the rest of it, I've still made sure I've drawn all of the stuff that goes behind it. And again, this leg's behind it. I'm still making sure that I'm drawing through so that I know that it's in the correct position. Some foreshortening going on here with this leg. Again, this foot's a pretty simple foot, so I'm just going to draw the rough shape. I'm not going to make it three-dimensional wedge at this point. I should be alright like that. So moving on to this part here, I know this leg bit here needs to be in front. Sometimes it's easier to draw the bits that have to be in front first. Sometimes, not all the time. And then I'll come back in here . See, I think what I would like, and again, I would have to erase and redraw if I was using traditional media, but I can do that. I think I'd just move that leg over a bit closer and really get a nice overlap with this thigh here. Make it a little bit more dynamic. Now you can see with this foot here, I am doing that wedge shape because it's in perspective. It's not quite as simple as the other one. Alright, not too bad. If I was to make this pose a bit more dynamic, what I'd probably do is lean his body forwards a bit more. So just keep that in mind. And if I was to redraw this, that's probably what I'd do. So let's move on now. So let's get our eraser. Let's go in here and start adding our anatomy now. Get our collarbone in here. Now I think from the way this arm is rotated, we're probably going to see more of the tricep. So we'll try and chuck that in. And I put that elbow up too high, that elbow should be down here. So it is the tricep furthest at the back here that is the longest, and this one here is a bit shorter. Something like this, I think. Now this arm's lifted up, so we need to make sure we indicate that with the chest here. And this one will probably be a bit more squished in like that. Again, that hand's a bit small. Let's make it a bit bigger. It's better. Might be not quite the right proportions. I'd need to bring it in a bit to about there, but it'll do for now, while we finish off the rest of this. So we're going to have the bicep in here, bit of that tricep on the back there. Make sure we get that nice overlap here. It's a pretty average looking hand that I've drawn here. In fact, I'm not a huge fan of this entire arm, so let's erase that, knock it back, and let's try it again. I think I'm digging something a bit more like that. So let's just fix this hand up now. better. Alright, let's make sure we add our lat back here. Get some of those abs in there. We don't want to draw every tiny little muscle, we want to indicate. Start with this back leg here because it should be a bit easier. And now let's move on to this front leg here. Now, get to the foot here. We have to remember the shape of the foot. And get this thigh in here. Alright, so then we have some nice foreshortening going on with this front leg here. And then we have a much more dynamic pose than our last pose. Now we could go in here now and add our shadows. So what I might do, just for fun, is I'll kind of come in and we'll ink this. And this is where we put most of our shadows in with our inking, because we can get a nice thick and thin line with our brush. Also give me a chance to correct this hand a bit. Again, still not a huge fan of that hand, but for now I think we can get away with it. Got a little carried away there with the face, which is not relevant to this course, but that's alright. So the trick with inking really is just placing the shadows. The other thing that we'd have to think about is the closer things are to the viewer, the larger they are, the thicker the lines will be. Which is why I've done that much thicker than the rest of it. And again, this is further away, so technically we'd be trying to make these lines thinner. Like so. And then what we'd have is something, oh, forgot our neck. We better go back and chuck that in there. Okay, so then we'd have something like that. Alright, so leave that here. We'll come back in the next lesson and try another one.